everyone, welcome back to our third talk on self-awareness, and this talk is going to focus all about outside points of view, and it's a really interesting and very important topic to get stuck into, so I'm excited to go through it with you today. Again, my name is Ginny, and this is Alison Lalieu, CEO of Ubalancer Solutions. So self-awareness, outside points of view. Again, we're going to link it to the 6 seconds emotional intelligence 3 key pursuits: knowing yourself, choosing yourself, and giving yourself. So when we're talking about outside points of view, we're talking about seeing ourselves, our self-awareness, and also how other people see us, and whose opinions we choose to listen to, whose perspective we choose to take on. So in life, there are things that we can control, like your behaviors, what you say, what you do. And there are also things you can influence, like key people around you or certain things, decisions you can make in your life. And there are also things that we cannot control. That's in that outer sphere. So I want you to pause for a minute here, pausing the video, and just think about what's emerging for you in each of these bubbles. What kinds of things, people, decisions, actions, feelings, thoughts, what comes up for you within your control, within your influence, and outside of your control? So when we're talking about self-awareness, that is really something that we're talking about what was in our control, our own thoughts, our own feelings, and our own behaviors. So the self-awareness is increasingly important, and actually research has been done by Dr. Tasha Eurich, and she interviewed many people to identify whether they were truly self-aware, and they came up with a very specific criteria. And actually she found that 95% of people reported and believed that they were self-aware, but actually only 10 to 15% really were. And that's because we're actually very unreliable narrators for our own self. This is because of many reasons. This is because we tend to operate on autopilot in a lot of our decisions. We're not really aware of why we're behaving a certain way. There's also the feel-good effect. It's more satisfying and rewarding to see ourselves in a positive light. And there's also what she calls the cult of the self, which is something that's occurred through the increase in social media and technology. And we've all naturally become a little more self-absorbed and a little less aware of how we're perceived. So thinking isn't knowing. This is a really important thing to think about. You may think that a situation is true, but it may not always be the truth. And our brains can be very tricky in the stories that it tells us. Our brain actually will get rewarded with dopamine when we complete a pattern. So when we can explain something in our external environment, our brain releases dopamine. So often we'll make explanations and make up stories to explain our outer world and interactions that feel true, but they're not always accurate. In fact, they're often inaccurate. So an example of this is psychologists Timothy Wilson and Richard Nisbett. They did an experiment where they set up 4 identical pantyhose outside a shop on a table, A, B, C, and D, and they were actually identical. But they asked people that were passing by to name the best pantyhose. So they had to ask what was their favorite one. And so consumer research in psychology shows that people will most often be drawn to the object on the right. It's a phenomenon in psychology. And that's exactly what happened in their experiment. People chose pantyhose D at a rate of 4 to 1. So overwhelmingly, they thought and believed that pantyhose D was better. And the interesting thing is, even when the psychologist explained the experiment and told them actually these are all identical, they still didn't believe that that was true. Thinking isn't knowing. So we need to be really mindful that our brain and our internal self-awareness isn't always the best estimation of the truth. So there are actually two types of self-awareness, and this idea was developed by Dr. Tasha Eurich in her research, which took years and years and years. And they actually identified that many of the people who thought they were self-aware were strong internally. They were very internally aware, but not externally aware. So those are the two kinds. Internal self awareness, which means how we see ourselves, our own values, our passions, aspirations, how we fit into the world, our reactions, including our thoughts, feelings, and our actions, our strengths and our weaknesses, all of those things, including how we believe we impact others. That's all internal awareness, and it is crucial. But there's also external awareness, and that means understanding yourself from the outside in, how other people perceive you in all those same factors, what they see as your strengths, what they see as your thoughts, feelings, reactions, patterns of behavior. And research shows that people who know how other people see them, and we're talking about close people that know you, we're not talking about strangers, are talking about people that work with you, learn with you, know you. How they see you, if you understand that, you become more skilled at empathy and you're more able to take other people's perspectives, which is really, really important. So Tasha Eurich developed these 4 archetypes. In the top right, left corner, people that are really high in their internal self awareness, but quite low in their external awareness, they're called introspectors. So they're really clear on who they are, but they don't challenge their own views, remembering that thinking isn't knowing. So they don't search for their own blind spots by getting feedback from reliable and trustworthy people in their lives. And this can kind of harm the relationships. They're often maybe not aware of what other people are thinking and feeling. Now, in the bottom left, we've got people that have really high external awareness. No, low external awareness and low internal awareness. And they're often called seekers. They're not quite sure who they are, what they want, and they're also not quite sure how other people see them. So they can feel really lost and quite frustrated in their performance, what they do, their work, and in their relationships. Over here on the bottom right, we have people with high external self-awareness. They really know how other people see them, but they're not quite sure how they see themselves. They're not quite sure about their own needs, their own strengths, their own values, their own thoughts, feelings, and actions. And they can be overly focused on appearing a certain way to other people. They aim to please. And that can be a really harmful thing for your own sense of self and your own success and sense of quality of life. Now, over on the top right corner are the people that are truly aware. This is the 10 to 15% of people that Dr. Tasha Eurich interviewed. And they are the people that know who they are, they know who they want, or what they want to accomplish, and they actually seek out and really value other people's opinions. And this is where anyone can really realize their potential and the benefits of self-awareness. This is where we all want to be. A key part of becoming internally self-aware without becoming too introspective is asking what instead of why. So, for example, why questions often tend to cause frustration and anxiety, and they can get us stuck in a rear view mirror kind of attitude where we're becoming brooding and ruminative on our life. Because the truth is, we don't have access to a majority of our inner thoughts, feelings, and why we behave the way we behave. You can ask, why am I feeling sad? The truth is, so much of our emotional data is stored in our unconscious brain that we can never really know the truth. Thinking isn't knowing. So it can lead to, it actually has been proven to lead to greater dissatisfaction and higher rates of anxiety. Flipping that to asking what questions is so powerful in actually turning that introspection outward. So instead of why am I feeling sad, asking What am I feeling and what situations are making me feel that way? Getting specific about the reality of the situation. And this is what Dr. Tasha Eurich discovered in her research, is that people that were in that 10 to 15% of aware, of truly aware, they asked what. In fact, over 1,000 times in the data, whereas why appeared fewer than 150 times. So this can help us stay forward thinking in our introspection, which is so important. So why do I feel terrible? Switching that to what situations make me feel terrible and what do they have in common? Looking for the patterns and the themes. What did they say about me? So maybe you've been in an experience, I know I have, where you've heard something has been said about you. You can think and ruminate for hours and journal on why they're saying that. Why? That's not going to bring you any more joy. But asking what is really important to me. What opinion do I really value? What are my values? Do I need to please those people? What about that behavior makes me feel proud? What about that behavior would I like to change? It puts you back in the driver's seat. It puts you back in control of the situation. And it's such a powerful shift for becoming self-aware. And when you're journaling, which is an incredible practice to have, I know I try to do it every day before I go to bed. I used to do why questions, and I have books and books filled with just the monkey mind. They call it monkey mind in a lot of in psychology groups, and it means your thoughts are just jumping here to here. And you're not gaining clarity on your situation a lot of the time. Shifting that to what is really powerful. So at the end of your day, asking what went well today. Specifically, what went well? What did I enjoy? What made me feel alive? What did I learn that I might do differently? And there's no judgment around that. It's not why did I mess up? It's what did I learn? And whose perspective can I get on a particular challenge? Because we are talking about that external self-awareness as well. So asking these 3 questions, you can pause this and write them down. They're really, really powerful. But whose perspective do we actually listen to? So that last question is important because you need to be very specific and mindful and conscious about whose perspective you're going to draw on. You don't become self-aware by listening to people who don't know you and their opinion of you, because that's, again, not the truth. We call this, this is a Wimbledon tennis court, okay? And this is just an analogy for any situation, any day in life where you're feeling particularly vulnerable, or you're putting yourself out there, or you're just living your life, okay? And you're gaining self-awareness through that. So you're on the court here. You're front and center of your court, and we have a few different people sitting in the stadium watching your game. Now, whose feedback do you listen to in that stadium? Do you listen to the hecklers? Now, these are the people who casually show up to a game. They've got no loyalty to you and whether you win or not. They are full of judgment. They're sitting in the back with popcorn, and they're often the ones where they will throw comments and hurl comments from a safe distance. So whether this is anonymous on the internet, whether this is out of your earshot or within your earshot in your social circle, these are the people that are not really invested in your success. And I don't know if you've seen a comedy show or been to a comedy show, but I love it when there's a heckler in the crowd, because I love seeing the comedians rise up, shut them down, drop their comment to the floor and step over it. It always gains a huge applause. And that is exactly the way that we need to treat hecklers in our lives. And we all have them. Every single person has hecklers in their lives, sitting in the back seats, throwing comments to try and throw you off your game. You need to recognize that that person's a heckler and you need to step over it. It doesn't even deserve your attention unless they're in the court with you and they're invested in what you're doing genuinely. They're not worth your attention. So recognize if any feedback you're getting is from the hecklers and disregard it. Now, the royal box, that they sit up here in the middle, front and center. They built the stadium. This is where the royals sit in a game of Wimbledon, in a match. They built the stadium. They have the power. So the question we ask ourselves when we're getting feedback from people that sit in the royal box is, who's setting the rules of play here? Who is going to decide whether I win or I lose? So this might be your teacher when you're giving it an assignment. They're going to be assessing your work. This may be your parent. They're setting the rules at home, maybe. Who is in, or it might be someone very dominant in your social group. It might be the friend that dictates what's cool and what's not cool. Who are they, and should they be in that box for you? Should they be in that royal box? And if you think they do not belong there, move them. Move them out of that box. Okay? Move them to the hecklers. If it is someone who you know they don't have your best interests at heart. Now, over here, we have the critics, and they are always there. They are the season ticket holders, as they're often referred to. They are saying things like, you're not enough, there's not enough to go around, and you're unworthy. You don't deserve to be here, and you're not good enough, and there's not enough for us both to be here, so there's not enough for you. Interestingly, this can come from outer people, but it often comes from yourself because of how you have been, the patterns that you have built, the patterns of thought, the patterns of feelings, and the patterns of actions that you have consolidated over so many years in your life. So the messaging that you've received and how that's translated into the way that you talk to yourself. We're going to be talking more about that voice, that critic voice, in the next talk of self-compassion. Recognizing who is giving you feedback, and if they are a critic, if they're telling you messages of you're not enough, there's not enough, or you're not worthy, again, recognize that as something that you do not need to listen to and that you should not listen to, whether that is yourself or whether that is coming from outside. And lastly, we have the people over here, and they are the most important people in your stadium. They are the supporters. They are there showing empathy for you. They are there showing you that they care. They want you to win, essentially. They're rooting for you. They're your fans. Okay? It also comes up as compassion, and that means you are your own supporter. You are showing self-compassion. You want yourself to win, not because you're going to please the people in the royal box, but because you know that this is good for you and this is right for you. Your head, heart, and gut agrees with what you're doing. We often call these people in the supporters, we call them your change champions. And these are the people whose feedback really matters. Okay, these are the people you ask for help, for a perspective on yourself, to develop your self-awareness. So you can pause this slide and take a moment to think about who those people are. Who are your supporters? Okay, perhaps it's only 5 people, 4, 3 people, including yourself. What does it look like to be a supporter in your stadium? What behaviors does that look like? What are they going to be saying, and what are you going to be hearing as you play your match, as you have everyone watching you? And I want you to write those people down and recognize when you see that in action, when you see empathy happening for you, when you see people brushing you off when you fall over and scrape your knee, when you lose a point. The people who are brushing you off and cheering you on and bringing you back up, recognize them as your supporters and go to them when you need an opinion. So what we've spoken about today is part of self-awareness in terms of outside points of view is focusing on both your external and internal awareness. So thinking about introspection for what you're feeling, thinking, and how you're acting and what you care about, but also valuing the feedback that you get from outside of yourself, particularly from your supporters, and recognizing the difference between the hecklers, the royal box, the critics, and the supporters. Asking what instead of why questions. Practice that every day. And lastly, seeking honest feedback. So no one that's going to sugarcoat it for you and say, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. That's not actually supportive. Honest feedback from your change champions. People that are going to love you no matter what, and they want the best for you, so they're going to give you good, constructive feedback. Drop the hecklers to the ground and step right over them. So I'm talking on social media, I'm talking in your life, I'm talking the gossipers, anyone that is doing it from a safe distance where they feel protected. Drop them to the ground and step right over them. Thank you very much.